Hello. As you can see, I have reached enlightenment. No, just kidding. I'm in my hotel room, and that is the light fixture behind me. And if you're listening to the audio version, you're missing out. Go watch the YouTube videos. They're much more visually appealing, to say the least. Anyways, welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This episode is, of course, brought to you by my friends at Lambs. As you know, I've been traveling a lot recently. Currently, I am in Austin, Texas for my next seminar, which will be next week. I'm doing the Strong Coach seminar with Mike Bledsoe, who is a future podcast guest. I've already done the interview, but the episode comes out later. So stay tuned for that. And just a little bit more about Lambs, if you aren't already familiar. I wear their beanie pretty much all the time. If you go on my Instagram and scroll through, almost every single picture on there is with me rocking my Lambs beanie, just because I want to protect my $1 billion supercomputer, which is my brain, from the effects of oxidative stress caused by EMFs or electromagnetic frequencies. They cause a whole host of issues. Most notably, that you'll notice instantaneously are things like brain fog, fatigue, headaches, trouble sleeping, irritability. Like, it's not great. And especially when traveling, not only in the airplanes and airport, but also in hotel rooms that are just, riddled with Wi-Fi, and you can't turn that off. There's nothing you can really do about it when you're in a hotel room. So I always wear my Lambs beanie. I even sleep with it on too, and it acts like an eye mask as well. So I'm protecting my brain, improving my sleep, and not getting any light in my eyeballs. So double improving of sleep. So yeah, you can get the hookup on Lambs Beanie if you go to getlambs.com and use code Captain Morgan. That will save you some doubloons. I think that's the pirate term, right? I always thought it was doubloon with an M, but I believe it's doubloon with an N. So speaking of language, that is what we're going to be talking about today with Mr. Mark England, a fantastic guest. It was one of my favorite interviews, and I actually just saw Mark England in person, the mystical, magical Mark England. I was just at the resilience seminar. So for his company Enlifted, they host these resilience seminars, and we do a whole bunch of things. It was awesome. It was in Richmond, Virginia, which is a beautiful area, by the way, much better than my experience in Austin has been so far. Richmond is gorgeous. But yeah, so that's where the resilience seminar was, at a private residence. And we did breath work with Brandon Powell, who is also going to be a future podcast guest. That was amazing. That's going to be a super fun podcast to record. We also did cold exposure. So he walked us through the Wim Hof method and take an ice bath, which, as I'm sure you are familiar, I'm very comfortable with. And that was a lot of fun. And we also did self-defense. So shooting specifically was my favorite part. Being a Marine Corps veteran, I love shooting. And then we did some language work with Mark. We broke down our stories and learned how to implement it into coaching as well, which was, obviously very beneficial for me. And we just met a lot of like-minded, amazing people. Term coined over the weekend was caring savages. Like, some of the most badass motherfuckers you can imagine, all in one place, doing breath work, ice bath, self-defense, language work together. And they fucking care. Like, the level of empathy and kindness in that room was amazing, because we were getting into some freaking vulnerable stories. We were talking about those deep stories that are buried inside, covered with armor, holding up your shield. This last weekend, we let down the shield, took off the armor, got vulnerable. And it was okay, because we were in a place of the most caring savages you can possibly meet. So when anybody shared something, we'd all, hug them, or if we were next to each other, we'd reach out our hand and like, hey, I see you, I feel you, I'm here. And it was incredible. Definitely made some lifelong friends for sure. So yeah, if you get the chance to the next resilience seminar, I'm not sure when that is, but definitely look into that. And you'll learn. So Mark at the end of this episode gives the link to his website. Spoiler alert, it's enlifted.me. So go on there, follow Enlifted on Instagram to learn about the next resilience seminar. But that's who today's podcast is with, Mr. Mark England. It's going to be a fantastic episode, and I'll stop wasting your time with this intro and we can get right into it. And this is one that you're going to want a pen and paper to take notes and also to follow along with some of the activities that he has us go through. So I'm excited for you guys. Listen to this one. Don't multitask. Stay focused. And let's dive into today's episode with Mr. Mark England. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Taylor Morgan. On today's episode, our guest speaker is Mark England, who is a TEDx speaker and co-founder and head coach of Enlifted. He has been researching, presenting, and coaching on the power of words and stories for the past 14 years and will continue for the next 36 years. Mark holds a master's degree in education and was an elementary school teacher before getting into personal development. Mr. Mark England, welcome to the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast.
What's up, Captain? I really like that. This is your captain speaking.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think originally people thought that the whole, like, this is your captain speaking and live the captain's lifestyle was all about, like, live my lifestyle. Like, I am your captain. I had to clarify, like, it's not about that. Like, we are all captains of our own lives if we choose to be, which is something we're going to get into on this podcast. I think language and understanding, let me go back. I know that language and understanding your internal beliefs and the words that you choose to use is the most profound realization that you can come to. At least it has been for me in the past few months.
It's a part of what most people that want to get better at something will it's one of the major pieces, man. I mean, how often you're in this game deep? How often do people talk about mindset? A lot. And good, great. Let's keep talking about it. And so everybody, we're known as the language people. He was correct. That was a fantastic introduction, by the way. Very, very accurate. I've been doing this 15. I turned 15 years old as a coach January 17th. And I've been doing one thing for that entire 15 years, which is staring at words, helping people with their stories, their identities, and unlocking their breath, which we're going to talk about today, because that's we're known as the language people. We might as well be known as the language and the breathing people. And when mindset is kept at it's held at the macro conversation, it's this thing we know we need to get better at, but how? And then there's that super confident looking person over there. Wow, that looks fun. Whoops, would have been nice because I'm over here. When we learn about what words to use less of and why, and what words to use more of and why, then mindset gets practical. We can practice thinking, speaking, and writing in better ways. Better ways. So it's absolutely important. And you know what? You stay in the game long enough, it does get profound. It really does.
Yeah, and I'm all about practicality here. I'd say, like, you can listen to these episodes or any podcast or read any book all you want, but it's not, knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential power. It becomes powerful once you implement it into your lifestyle. And you mentioned breath work, which is, definitely something we're going to talk about. I came up with this. I don't know if you've heard this before, right before, as I was prepping for this, breath words. What do you think about that? Like the words people use when they're in that upregulated state.
I dig it. Um, breathy words, for sure. There, people when people get themselves into an upregulated state, and it's usually through a story. Okay. Very rarely do people go run some wind sprints and then walk in the door and get in an argument with their spouse because they're all upregulated and stressed. No, it's this slow creeping roll into a story of, you did that to me and they need to do this and I can't
Mm,
keep doing this and maybe I could possibly do such and such and such and such if only so and so would step up to the plate. And then all of a sudden the top pops, right? And uh, uh, for all y'all coaches out there, I was on a call this morning with he's likely going to enroll into one of our certs. Cool, um, firefighter, and we were talking about breathing, and I just told him straight up because I say this a lot. Good luck changing your client's mind if their breath is trapped in their chest. Breath trapped here. We're going to get the nods, the smiles, the social niceties. And when it's called amygdala hijack. Look it up. People's breath is trapped in their chest. Their capacity to hear goes down. Their capacity to learn goes down. We lose access to our peripheral vision, like actual physical vision, and also our creative faculties. Um, and so yeah, it's good to know what words to use to help people get their breath back down in their abdomen so they can hear you. If
mhm.
you're a coach, if you want to help them.
Yeah. After going through and then just reviewing before this talk, the vocabulary course and the Enlifted course, uh, everything you just said was like projection, negation, like all these crazy things that we're going to get into on today's show. But I think it would be good to start with people's stories about whatever it is, and we can walk them through the 4-step process about whatever their
Happy to.
story is. So
Very
I
happy to.
think we'll start with that.
Cool. Um, let's talk about that fateful day in 2003. We'll start there when I fell in love on sight for the second time. How's that sound?
Sounds
First,
perfect.
first time was when a dude choked me senseless in a jujitsu class in 1996. I wrestled in high school. Yeah, that's cool, fine. I pin you, you pin me. But dude, chokes and submissions, that was just way cooler. And then that led on to a bunch of things. Um, and then I find myself over in Thailand. I moved over there in 2002, thought I was a tough guy. Go pro. No, you're not, says the universe. And I'm living in Bangkok and I take a vacation because I need one because I'm a mess down to an island in the Gulf of Thailand called Koh Samui. And one night there was a man by the name of Barry Musgrave who had become uh, my first mentor in this work, Taylor. And he was doing a workshop on emotional detoxification, and I snickered. In all my wisdom, I laughed at the emotional detoxification. I went though, glad I did. And guess what he talked about? A lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. He talked about words. He talked about stories. He talked about identities. He talked about stress responses. Talked about tunnel vision. Talked about addiction to the victim mentality.
Mm.
Ooh, what's that? And then he asked the crowd. He said, "Is there anybody who's hung up on a story right now?" And this woman just shot her hand up. And it was a legit stinger of a ouch breakup story. Her and her girlfriends get a house down at the beach for beach week. Her boyfriend and his friends get a house down at the beach for beach week. Add the jungle juice
Yep.
punch and press play. You know how this
Been there.
goes.
Yep.
Been there. Drama ensues in the form of him cheating on, like hooking up with her best friend one night in front of everybody, and then dumping her the next night in front of everybody. Can we all say ouch on 3?
Poor
And she's
girl.
still pissed. It was 4 years ago at the time. And she tells the story all the way through. And she's crying and she's angry. And then he has her tell it again. and changes it a little bit in the language. You could see it loosening up. Okay. And the second time through, she said, no tears. And he clocked it right from the first read, from the first telling of the story. When he got to the sentence, it was the Lord of the Rings, the sentence that held the whole thing together, which was, he did that to me. He did that to me. And he goes, say it again. She had to do it 3 times. He did that to me. Now take out the me and put in himself. That's exactly what she did, but it was her story. So it was much more like, what? And she said it like a question. He did that to himself. And then you see her talk herself into a new story just by changing one word. Yes, fine. He got a little bit of the emotional glue. He softened the thing up and then went in for the quote unquote kill shot and did it with one word. He did do that. He did do that to himself, and then she went on to describe what happened to that guy's reputation afterwards, how he lost friends. And she goes, you know what? It was worse for him than it was for me. And the whole thing wasn't going to work out because the guy was actually really weird anyway. And 10 minutes later, before she had just told the same story she told probably 1,000 times, 10,000 times in her head.
Mm-hmm.
And then with just a little jujitsu, language jujitsu, he gave her a new story. And I said, that's not my story, but that's my story. Because I went over there and I had my second knee surgery after 6 months of being over there. It was a big deal. I'd only had my passport for 2 years. All I wanted to do was be a pro fighter because I thought it was the coolest fucking thing in the world. And that whole thing crashed down. And I used that, Taylor, as proof. I used it as the final piece of evidence in a case that I was making for myself, that I was a loser and I was somehow doomed to fail. And there was something wrong with me. And now I have the ultimate piece of proof. All these fears that I had in the back, here's the verdict, because this is fact now. And after a year of that, I got tired. I got tired of myself because I didn't laugh. I didn't laugh for an entire year, which is a spooky thing to do. It's a very strange place, like, to live energetically.
Like, legitimately,
didn't smile.
You didn't laugh?
I did not laugh once. It just the victim story. So to the power of story, to identity, which we're going to touch on that definition, the victim mentality. I entrenched a victim mentality so deeply in me, it sucked out it robbed me of my ability to laugh and enjoy myself and breathe and like connect with people. I was so disconnected. And also just not present, because I was just caught up in this never-ending story of woe. So the current definition, Webster's definition of identity, is the fact of being who or what a person is. And okay, fine, great. I did this on stage at TEDx. It's quite an easy definition to dispel, which means to cast out. So, I would imagine you, Taylor, and your audience, you all see yourself differently now than when you were 5. So wait a minute. Well, then that's, then my identity is not a fact. It's not the fact of who or what I am. It's an ongoing, fluid, flexible process. Mm-hmm. And guess what? We participate in that. We did not learn this in school. I feel very comfortable saying that. So after asking thousands of people in workshops, I made sure I asked for, it was a 2-year period of time giving workshops. Raise your hand if you've had any training in how to use your language to improve your emotions and your self-confidence, your self-image. I had 3 people raise their hand, one in a Waldorf school, one in a Montessori school, and one in a Steiner school. Nobody ever coming up in the public school system, which is what I did. And I didn't get any of this training when I got my degree in education. Nothing. It was all spelling, grammar, and definitions. Mm-hmm. We got an education issue going on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we could record a whole nother podcast. We definitely could on that topic. It's ridiculous.
buddy, if that's an interesting topic for you, my business partner is the man for that, Adam Chin. We can talk more about that later. Um, he's the man behind the curtain, and he brings a very strong, well articulated conversation about the education system, where it comes from, what it is now, where it's likely going, and what it could look like, depending.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that for sure. Yeah, we can talk after the podcast. Let's let's get into the victim mentality, because yeah, I know this is something you're big on. This is one of my biggest pet peeves when people are in that victim mentality. So take it away with a definition of the victim mentality.
Happy to. I'm going to do this one twice, everybody, because it's worth it. The definition of the victim mentality, I'm going to take a little bit out of the middle, and this is the verbatim definition. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. Let's unpack that. So, the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends, it's a tendency. Okay. So it's very rarely is it exclusively the way people see themselves, or it's a tendency.
It's not a fact like your identity, apparently.
Ooh, no, not at all. It's more on that in a second. The victim mentality, the second sentence, the victim mentality depends, as in it has to have a habitual thought process. Habitual accurately implies duration and addiction. It depends on a habitual. So if the victim mentality, which in my personal and professional opinion, and a lot of people in this game, once they get their head around it, it's the thief in the night, y'all. This thing's coming for everything. It wants it all. It wants your time. It wants your attention. It wants your relationship. It wants to squat in the entirety of your mental real estate. It wants to rob you of your talent. And it's sneakier than shit. I mean, what's more seductive than our own voice and our own mind? And most people are defenseless to that thing. And so I'll give ourselves a pat on the back, man. You know, we've done a good job of demystifying the conversation about identity and the victim mentality, and then, well, the another way of thinking and speaking, believing, and using your words, as we call the architect mentality. We've also gamified it. We've made it fun, man. You know, there's a way. There are ways that we can use our words to increase our stress, to trap our breath, to turn things into absolute huge insurmountable problems. Okay, there are ways to do that. Everybody, grab a pen. Do you have a pen, Taylor? Oh, my man. He's gonna do this. It's super easy. And also, if y'all like this exercise, and if you ever want to introduce someone to the concept of their language influencing them for better and for worse, we got great ones, and this is at the very top. Okay, because 30, 50, 80. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, and 80% of what we teach. So you turn around and talk to someone about this and like teach them, work them through a little thing, it sticks in your head faster. Everybody write this sentence. How can I ever get over this?
Wow. Okay. This will be relevant.
How can I ever get over this?
Okay.
Read that sentence, please, Taylor. Captain Morgan.
How can I ever get over this?
What kind of feels does that create?
Like a tension in the shoulders, upper neck area.
What does the mental imagery look like, the picture?
very stressed out and out of control state, as if it's beyond anything that I can influence.
That, folks, is extremely common feedback. I mean, you're talking, if you have any exercise that will elicit the damn near same response with people like 96, 7, 8% of the time, you're working with something very effective. That's what this particular exercise does. Now, that's part one. So you write it, have the person read it, ask them to describe the feeling and the picture. That's it. Step one. Step two, have them take their magic wand. Whoops, I meant their pen. And scratch out one word. One word. Ever. Scratch out the word ever. Now say it.
How can I get over this?
Any difference?
Absolutely. It becomes much more actionable, like you're asking a question instead of a rhetorical question.
You absolutely nailed it. So yes, fine. Syntactically speaking, which is a complicated word, meaning how the words are combined. How can I ever get over this with a question mark? Fine. As far as the syntax, it's a question. And when the word ever does a fucking fantastic job of inflaming, it's a drama language keyword. It turns up the drama, and then I turn a question into a statement. How can I ever get over this? I'm not asking how. I'm making the statement of I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And so when our reticular activating system, which we will talk about as well, that right there is one of the top 3 things, in my opinion, for any mindset focused individual, for them to know about, as far as why they see what they see and why their clients see what they see. When I say, how can I ever get over this? And I'm saying to myself, I'm screwed. I can't get over this. My reticular activating system sees it as this immovable thing, this impossible ordeal. And so I just go, oh, shit. When I take out that one word, because it's a presupposition, it presupposes I can't get over it. So I'm not looking for the way how. How can I get over this? That's an actual question. And so my reticular, I presuppose that there are ways to get over this. So my reticular activating system, not only does it shrink the thing down in my imagination and turn the volume down on the feels, it starts looking for things that we can take action on, or it makes it actionable. The first one makes it inactionable. The second one makes it actionable. And that's just one word out of the English language. That's one word out of one sentence. There's a game to be played, y'all, and that's such good news. That is such good news. And this is early on in the podcast. I have a promise that I make people. And guess what? You can experience this stuff yourself. You know, if you make some seemingly minor adjustments in your everyday, ordinary language, you're going to get an immediate return right now. And then there's going to be some really cool downstream knockoff effects. And when I mean language, I mean internal dialogue, external dialogue, what we think, what we say, and what we write. That's what I mean when I refer to language.
Yeah. That's why I'm so excited for these type of podcasts. So I first interviewed Chase, which is how we got introduced to each other. That was a fantastic. Yeah, that was a fantastic episode. That was the first podcast that I had interviewed somebody on language. Then I recently interviewed Matt Maruka, the founder of Raw Optics. This episode has not been out yet. But then that was my second favorite interview, because we didn't talk about red light or blue light blocking glasses until like the very end. We focused on, yeah, there you go. I got mine too. We focused on language and beliefs. And that was, again, another fantastic interview. And I believe that it's so profound and impactful because it does make an instant change, like you mentioned, instantly by just crossing off that one word. If the listener, if you guys have a story that's playing in your head, an interpretation of what you believe your story to be, simply by switching around some words, taking some out, using architect language, which you can explain, instantly makes it better.
1,000%. 1,000%. And again, guess what else? It's free, folks. You know, it's free for you to it's your language. I mean, nobody's going to change your language for you.
Mm.
Okay? At the end of the day, it's something that uh, it's the best of news and it's the worst of news. Sweet, I'm creating my own story. No, I'm creating my own story. And guess what? We are. You know, we are. And yeah, the more you,
Abracadabra.
my man's been studied. Uh, uh, just a little bit of information goes a long way, folks. You know, your call, Captain Morgan. If this is a good time to go into the three pillars of conflict language and architect language, happy to do that. We can talk about the reticular activating system. We can talk about four-stepping stories.
Mm.
You know, I can tell some stories from the chair, you know, of sessions. We can
Yeah.
talk about presentation skills, or we could do a whole other podcast on presentations. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely want to cover all of them. Let's see which would be the best one to start with first. I don't know if we dove. Well, I guess the conflict language will kind of cover the victim mentality a little bit more. So yeah, let's take it from there. The
Gotcha.
conflict language.
Gotcha. So in December 2014, I shook hands with my business partner in September 2014. In December 2014, we go down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and use his former employer's film studio for a period of time, and we shoot Core Language Upgrade. We get back to Virginia, and we look at each other, and we go, shit. We got to reshoot this thing, because before conflict language, which was no small thing to do for two dudes bootstrapping a company, before conflict language was called conflict language, it was called victim mentality language. So once again, that second sentence of the victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That habitual thought process, okay, we've mapped out, there's three pillars of it, okay? And we were calling it victim mentality language, which was too strong of a place in our opinion, and we made the right decision to lead with. Because people hear that, they're like, oh, I'm not a victim. They hear conflict, they're like, yeah, you know, I've got a little conflict at work and shit. You should see my wife and I's relationship. So we reshot Core Language Upgrade mainly to change one definition, change the title of this one thing that I'm about to tell you about, from victim mentality language, even though it's very accurate as far as the definition is concerned, to conflict language. So there are three pillars of conflict language, and these three pillars are responsible for, and these are my numbers, for roughly 85% of the ouch and sting and pain and woe in people's life. And I make that call based on doing this stuff for a little while. And so there's the three pillars are soft talk, negations, and projections. Soft talk is where the decision and anxiety come from. The anxiety related to indecision. Okay. Negations, that's where the worry and the worst case scenario comes from. And projections, that's the venom. So soft talk. Statements like, and you've never heard any of your clients say anything like this, you know, I guess I could be a little more consistent showing up. Or I might be overeating at night. Or it's almost like I'm talking myself out of committing. You know, maybe I'm drinking too much on the weekends.
Here's one that I wrote down for this that I heard the other day.
Yeah.
I've been trying to manage my time better, but I can't stay focused.
Oh, nice. So we got the trying, we got the soft talk keyword, and then the
Mhm.
can't stay focused, which is the negation. So you got
Mhm.
some indecision about the worst case scenario. So the soft talk keywords, folks, and there's only a handful of them. And this is, so I get asked very frequently, what do you recommend? What recommendations do you make for people? And I've got a macro recommendation, I've got a micro recommendation. And we will revisit this towards the end, because it's usually the best place to put it once the entire mosaic, or as much as we can paint in an hour and a half, has been painted. We're going to run a soft talk challenge, if that's okay with you. It's super easy, and yeah, it works. So the soft talk keywords: think, maybe, sort of, kind of, guess, like, almost like, possibly, probably, try, seems, hopefully. Those words, depending on the person, I guarantee these are in your language, everybody that's listening to this. To some degree, they're there. And for some of you, they're a major problem. And what they inevitably do in a very sneaky way, it's death by 1,000 cuts, is it tricks you into thinking that you're an indecisive person. Okay. There's the static identification. Remember the fact of being, I'm just really indecisive. Well, what if it's a process instead of an outcome? What if you're using indecision language, which we call soft talk a lot, which is creating your gun shyness, or your inability to make a decision and see it through, or your inability to own what you know you're fucking doing. Is it okay if I hope it's okay if I drop
Fuck
F
yeah.
bombs? Okay,
Fuck
my
yeah.
man. As in, I guess I'm drinking too much. No, you are. Take out the guess and own it. That guess, that sneaky little guess, that puts that absolves me from ownership. It just puts it right at the tip of my fingers. And now I can keep doing that thing and not have to make a change. Or maybe I should spend more time with my wife. Take out the maybe, because you should. Okay. I'm probably being too hard on the kids. Like, these are all statements. We know we're doing that shit. And the soft talk, it kicks the can.
Takes you off the hook.
That's a great way. You're exactly right. Get you off the hook. And taking those keywords out and solidifying our language. I'm drinking too much. I need to spend more time with my wife. I can be more patient with the kids. I can be more consistent in my workouts. I can improve my diet. I will get better results if I be more consistent. My whole world, I just got some phenomenal guardrails, and I did that in under a minute. So if you want to double your confidence, you can double your confidence. You can double your confidence in 6 weeks by taking out 50% of your soft talk keywords. That's where the soft talk challenge comes in. So that's one pillar, soft talk. The second pillar, negations. I can't seem to focus. Getting close to what you said right there. Or I won't wreck my diet over the holidays. Or I can't keep staying up at night scrolling on my phone. Or I haven't got the energy to make it to the gym. Or I won't I won't let myself down again this time. What did all those sentences just do? I just flashed all of the worst case scenarios that I don't want up in front of on my imagination. And guess what? The stuff adds up, folks. Those are stressful pictures for people. Here's a great example. There's I've told this story a lot because it's a great example of a negation and how our language influences four main aspects of our experience of ourselves. 2014, I'm up in Calgary doing a training for a sales team, and I stay after and do one-on-one sessions with everybody. So I'm in a room, this 23-year-old young man's in a room, two chairs facing each other, and we're talking about his career, and he's upset. Things are not, negation acknowledged, going the way he wants them to. This is what he says, and this is what he does. He goes, Mark, I can't keep focusing on my past. True story. But more than that, it sounds unbelievable. So for y'all that are listening, I just turned around and looked behind me. I can't keep focusing where? On my past behind. I turned around and looked behind me as fast as possible, and then turned and looked back at Taylor, because that's what the dude did. He turned around, looked behind him, and looked back. And I go, dude, you know, you just turned around and looked behind you, right? And he goes, what, really? I said, yeah, what'd you see? I saw myself on the couch and all alone. There's two of them. Our language, four main aspects of our experience of ourselves. Our language influences our physical body. Okay, we just keep it easy, simple. Posture. Okay. You ever talked yourself into a good mood? Yeah, you have. You ever talked yourself into a bad mood? Yeah, you have. Was your posture the same? No, it wasn't. Okay. Talk yourself into a bad mood. Think, you know, I'm down in the dumps.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk yourself into a good mood. Things are looking up. Words. Then his imagination, in a split second, he made a picture of him all alone and on the couch. And then I asked, how are you feeling? He was angry and a little bit scared. And where was he breathing? In his chest. Posture, imagination, emotions, breath. Those, you put those two, if you find something that will consistently improve those four areas of your experience of yourself simultaneously and very consistently, which your language will, then you got something. And then I said, okay, great. Guess what? Rocket science. Handed him a pen. Write that sentence down. He goes, which one? I said, the one you just said. I can't keep living like this. No, excuse me. I can't keep focusing on my past. He writes it down. I can't keep focusing on my past. And I said, if that's what you can't keep doing, what can you start doing? And he asked it like a question, because when new stories come into our awareness, they're new. There's a socialization period. He goes, focus on my future more. Hear how it went up at the end? And I said, yeah. What are three things that you can do? And it took us 3 minutes to get them. So he needed to read 2 books. And then he needed to go to the social functions that they do once a month. And they have a mentorship program. And I need to sign up for that. He did those 3 things. He wrote them down. He made a decision. In under 5 minutes, he had a game plan as to where to move forward, instead of saying, I can't keep focusing on my past and keep looking. The first thing my driving teacher said when I got in the car, he said, look where you want to go, because you're probably going to go there. Wow. Got that one at 15 and a half years old. And I'm still talking about it. I'm 45 now, 30 years ago. That sounds crazy to say. Did you all know that Kurt Loder from MTV, he's 76 years old? How old are you, Taylor?
I am 26 and I don't even know who Kurt Loder is.
Yeah, I know. I know. I got 20 years on you. That he was a really cool guy on MTV when I was in high school. And I made that post, and some of my high school friends were like, dude,
damn,
are you serious? Exactly. I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. Look it up. The negation keywords: can't, won't, isn't, hasn't, haven't, not, shouldn't, Those words are going to force you to stare at the worst case scenario, whether you like it or not. My grandmother was a 3rd-degree black belt, Olympic gold medalist in worrying. Okay. And she, I mean, just the best. She would say weird, she'd be like, I worry so much about you. And then once I realized, and it was, she was saying that to get some attention, like she was doing me a favor of making pictures of me and her head going down in flames. And then I'm like, now that I understand just a little bit more than I did when I was 15, she's dead now. But if I was to say it, I'd be like, I'd never say this to her because it just would go right over her head. How about making some pictures of me succeeding? And then articulating those to me. I had a random, normal, friendly dream about this girl I used to date a while ago, and I sent her a voicemail the next day. I said, hey, you were in my dream last night, and you looked great, and everything was going really well. Have a nice day. She wrote back, she said, I've never had anyone say anything like that to me before. I go on rants, dude. I go on just rants and tangents.
No, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So we covered negations and soft talk, and now on to what I believe to be the root cause of almost, if not all of everybody's problems, projections.
Dude, they're the nuke codes. They're the nuclear codes. Nothing will pucker up somebody's butthole faster than a good old fashioned projection. I own unpuckered.com, by the way. I've owned it for 3. It's a promise wow. To God. I was surprised I got the .com. I'm like, where? Everybody's fucking sleeping, man. We don't know what we're going to do with it. We were going to make an app, which we are still making an app. And for the first 6 months, the app, I promise, was called the Unpuckered app.
Wow.
Yeah. Because guess what? When you change your words, you change your stories and you change your identities. When you change your words, you change what you see, you change how you feel. And if you do it in a conscious way, because most people want to feel better than feel worse, you do it in a conscious way, then we go from an upregulated sympathetic nervous system response state to a downregulated parasympathetic nervous system response state. The breathing descends. Keep working the stories and the language, and eventually your breathing will descend back down into its abdomen. And if you keep it there for long enough, that will become a home base for it. And not only that, your butthole will unpucker. True
Seriously.
Story. 100%. 100%. When someone's breath is trapped in their chest, their asshole is puckered up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I noticed this because I'm conscious of this now, that when I'm in that upregulated state and I catch myself there, I'm there for no particular reason. I just relax and every muscle just relaxes. And you can choose to be in that state based on your thoughts, based on your breathing. It's all in your control. But if you use projections and you place your life and what's going on with you in the hands of somebody else, you're going to be a slave to that person.
Yeah, and you totally are, and you're gonna trick yourself into thinking they need to change before you can feel better. Don't hold your breath on that one. Get it? Because you will hold your breath on that one. So, what are the key words? You, she, he, they. People's first names, mom and dad, and if you get old and grumpy like me, the government. Okay.
Yep.
You always interrupt me. You always interrupt me. There's going to be 2 people in that picture. Me and them, and they're doing this to me, or she never listens to me, or he never lets me think for myself, or my mom talks to me like a child. This one, this one will pluck some of y'all right in the nose. My mom talks to me like a child. Look at the words. My mom talks to me like a child. So there's mom. Mom's in the picture. You're in the picture. She's talking down. She's going to be elevated down to you like a child. And how are you going to feel? You're going to feel all those negative childhood emotions, and then you're going to get angry, adult, pissed emotions. And if you keep telling yourself that story for a while, mom calls and you just, you're grumpy, you chew her out, or just you're short, and she's like, what the hell's going on? And so, but if you know that there's a game to be played, and just a little bit about this stuff, just a little bit goes a long way. My mom talks to me like a child, and you take up your pen, and even if it weighs 500 pounds, because some of this stuff can get very intense. It's some of the hardest work I've ever done on myself. My own personal story is reflecting my projections. So projections, projectile, they're going out. Reflections, it's me looking at me. Scratch out mom and put in I. Oh, I talk to me like a child. I mean, who they're so condescending to me. They, me. Take out they, put in I. I'm so condescending to me. Seriously, folks, let's just get real honest about it. Who's talked more shit to you than you? It's not even a fucking contest.
Hmm.
It's not even in the same universe. It's not in the same ballpark. Okay. And yet we're very quick, generally speaking, to externalize responsibility for our emotions and feelings. And once again, this is an education thing. It doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. You you're 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 always controlling. Good. You're always controlling me is going to fuck me up just as much as it is Einstein. Okay. Just as it is a picture. If I allow myself to believe it, it has nothing to do with intelligence. Okay, this is not an IQ test at all. This is a training test. This is an education test. And like I said, man, it's our internal dialogue is super seductive. And here's where it gets even more interesting and worse. I mean, there's a lot at stake here, folks. The main thing being your quality of life, and whether you like being you or not. My business
Just
partner,
that.
just that, just
That's
that,
it.
you know, he says, if you enjoy being you, then you're winning, you win. It's really hard for you to enjoy being yourself if you're uncomfortable in your own skin. And it's very hard to be comfortable in your own skin if your breath is trapped in your chest. Okay. So, you're, you're, you're always controlling me. I take out the you and put in I'm always controlling me. Now I've got something that I can work with, as opposed to, and half the time you say the projections to people, they'll have no idea what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Okay. Even though you believe it wholeheartedly. It's like your mom, you say that, you're always treating me like a child. And your mom's like, I really have no idea what you're talking about. Okay. So you put those three things together: indecision, negations, worst case scenarios, projections, venom, and you've got a well orchestrated, well oiled machine that's got you on the tracks to Fucksville. Okay. And I know, because I have lived it. I've lived it personally, and I've lived it professionally. There's always some manicuring to do on story with our stories and things. And I know I've done a decent job on my story because my breath is so low, dude. My breath is so low, and it's low and slow. So those are the two words. So for all you coaches out there, that is paramount instruction for our Enlifted coaches. We tell them, get your breath low and slow and keep it there. Because when you go poking around in people's stories with some damn good questions and the intent to get to the most stuck parts of their stories, because that's why most people book in for a coach. Most people do not book in for a coach when things are pretty okay.
Yep.
No, they've got a problem. They need some help. And there's emotional story in there somewhere, I promise you. You go poking around in people's stories with some good questions. And I mean, you've been coaching for a while. You've heard some crazy ass stories, fact or fiction.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's nuts what people are walking around there with, and they'll tell you. And so whether you're out on a date or you're giving a presentation or you're on a sales call for your coaching packages or you're working with someone who is very emotional about something, you're working out some traumatic stories, get your breath low and slow, because you'll retain your ability to problem solve, creative faculties, and then very important, what you will not do with them is something you do not want to do with them. Double negation acknowledge is trauma bonding. So when they go into, they tell a story of an abuse or a bad breakup or a failed business or a divorce, um, uh, pick your poison,
Mhm.
and they get all emotional and they're locked up, and the coach gets locked up too. Okay, now you are bonding with them on a trauma level, and that's
A shit show.
it's a shit show. I'm using your words. It's a shit show. So changing your language, and we'll talk about 4-stepping stories if you want to, happy to do that. That will unlock your breath on a timeline. Great. And then so when you start helping people with this, or however you coach, because I'm opinionated, we got a certain way of doing things, and it's a weird saying, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I'm pretty fucking convinced that it's better for me to coach breathing well than it is to be breathing poorly.
100%.
Most coaches would agree with that. Let's breathe well and set a better tone, because you are going to set a tone. You're going to set a rhythm. You're going to set a rhythm with your clients. It's called entrainment. Look that up, and get yourself breathing well, and there will be carryover to your clients, whether you even mention your breathing or not. They will eventually unpucker.
Mhm.
What
Yeah,
would you
and
like to talk about next, Taylor?
I just want to say that the breathing thing is, I've talked about this on many podcasts before. I've interviewed an XPT coach who said that same thing, low and slow for breath work. And I've experienced this in my coaching and also my personal relationships. Whenever somebody is telling their story and they are in that upregulated state where their breathing is in their chest and they are literally stressing themselves out, breath work, understanding how to control that breathing and get in a more parasympathetic rest and digest state is the first step to unlocking whatever is going on. And I think the quickest way to do this is the physiological sigh. Are you familiar with that?
I know what a sigh is, not necessarily a physiological sigh.
It's like the technical term for a double inhale and then a slow exhale through the mouth. So
that's what that's called.
Yeah, Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about this. Humans do it naturally in their sleep when there's too much carbon dioxide built up. Dogs do it. You'll see them if they're stressed out, they'll do this. So it's a even just one of those is like the quickest way to snap out of it. And you can do that anywhere, anytime.
People do that when they're crying too. You're like,
yeah, you just do it naturally. And then
the physiological sigh.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, dude. I didn't know that had a technical term. Of course it has got a technical term.
Yeah, so I've found that to be the fastest way. Before I'd recommend box breathing, but that's just slightly more technical and requires more thinking. This is just one breath. boom, instantly. Every single time I do that, I automatically feel more relaxed. And I always like to say that um, it does no good if you are arguing, or I mean, it's probably never good to argue, but never good if you're talking from a place of emotion, because then you're reacting instead of responding to whatever's coming up. So do that
Yeah,
breath work.
it's high emotions. They lead to monologues instead of dialogues.
Talking but not listening. That's not a real conversation.
Not so much.
So I think it would, I know it's important to go back to what you said about the projection. I forget what you said. The last example you gave of the projection, you are something, whatever it is, you are, this is what it was. You are controlling me. You can replace the you. So switch out the you with anxiety or depression or this pain. That's all the same thing, is controlling me. Right. And so you can switch all of those around to I. And I think so many people accept their diagnosis as their identity. It is a fact of who they are. And that's why they're holding on to this story that they can't let go of their anxiety or depression, the pain that they've had for years, whatever it is.
Very astute observation and very accurate. Very accurate. There's a difference between, my pain is controlling, or my pain is ruining my life, versus my story of my pain is ruining my life.
So I think this would be a good time to get into that 4-step process of people's stories. And we don't have to go, well, yeah, we can just do it, because we did this when I interviewed Chase. But if people haven't heard that episode, we'll just do it again, because this is a powerful exercise.
It's powerful and it's simple, and anybody can understand it. Um, and it works. I've used this. It's called 4-stepping a story, because there's 4 steps, hence the name. I've used this on everything from simple procrastination to war crimes and torture, a bunch of gnarly stuff in between. And it works because we're addressing the mechanics of stories. Okay. The mechanics of storytelling. So first things first, let's look at what most people do not do, or let's look at what most people do. Most people, and I
Act your
understand
age,
why.
Mark.
Never. Most people keep the stories of sting and ouch and woe, the stories that have haunted them for God knows how long, they keep them inside. Okay. They keep them inside and to themselves, and a very small percentage of the population talks them out, talks about them. Okay, cool. That is a story's preferred environment. Inside, in the dark, left alone to its own devices. That thing, soft talk acknowledged with a little bit of sarcasm, that thing probably isn't going anywhere as far as the way it's influencing us, the way it influences the way we see ourselves in the world or other people. So what do we do? First things first. There's a big difference between, I did this way more than once. You remember handing in a rough draft in school?
Hmm?
Remember when you didn't hand in a draft at all?
Oh, yeah.
There's a little bit of a difference there. Until a story is written down, it's the equivalent of not having a draft to hand in. First things first, title a specific memory. You want to get specific here. The devil truly is in the details, and also so is the liberation. So let's, I'd say divorces come up frequently when we're doing level 1 clean house Enlifted coaching, which is where we go into the most stuck parts of people's stories and air them out.
Mhm.
There's very, very frequently divorces come up, and very frequently children remember when they're sat down and told. And a lot of the time, I'd say 75% of the time, it's done in the kitchen. Okay. So let's say someone comes in, and I've worked this exact general scenario so many times. This is par for the course. Someone comes in and they have like a man. We'll say he's a man will come in, or I'll be working with a man, and he'll have feelings that he has to take care of everything, and that everything is all his fault. Okay. And we start talking about it. Coaching point here: get your clients talking about their stuff. They're going to create emotions and feelings about those things. That's good. That's natural. You want that. And a vast majority of the time, 95% of the time, the themes, the emotional themes and patterning that we have in our adult lives have gotten set up in our childhood. So let's say this particular man has a reoccurring theme of not good enough. He's got to take responsibility for everything, and it's all his fault. Okay. And so he talks about this or this current relationship he's in, or this current breakup, and he's just giving some details, and he's got this 8 out of 10 in his chest, and it's got sadness and resentment and anger in there. Great. And then you ask him some magic questions. These were the questions I was referring to earlier. You go, coaches, use them if you want to, and be prepared, because 35-40% of the time people are going to go straight into something. You can go from 0 to nuclear quite quick with these questions. When was the first time you ever felt that? 1. 2, does that remind you of something? Those 2 questions, and let's say he goes, well, yeah, it reminds me of when my parents got divorced when I was 7. And then I ask, do you remember the specific moment, or what was the most poignant memory with the divorce? Usually they're going to say, let's just say he says, when they told us for the first time. It's great. Where did it happen? In the kitchen. So we'll title it something like "In the Kitchen," and we literally write down "in the kitchen." Now we've got a specific memory. You see what I did just there, folks? Went from pattern to details, big picture to specific event, because that's usually how it's going to work. And what you want to do, you want to work on a specific event basis as much as possible, as far back as possible, because you clean that up and you clean up everything downstream. Okay. Even though they're 35 or 45 or 55. Okay. You clean up those early childhood seed events, and it unlocks all kinds of doors down the line, or at least makes other stories that they need to get out and on paper, which we're about to go into, way more easier to deal with. So we've got "in the kitchen." It's a specific memory. It's titled and it's written down. And then I say, okay, write out, it's better language. Write out what happened. And this folks, is not journaling. Journaling is where you talk or you write about how you feel about what happened. Writing out a story is where you write it out and can, like, it's going in a book. Have them err on the side of more detail than less. Okay. And just so y'all know, the conflict language, the projections, the soft talk, the
Negation.
negations, and 4-stepping stories. And we'll talk about how to use Google Docs with this, because there's a lot of virtual coaching going on, way more virtual, and it's going to stay that way. And as much as I can pack into this, we are open source with our coaching technology. Okay. We are open source with our IP. If someone wants to come get certified with us, great. Come on in. We're going to do it real well. Or if you simply want to learn this stuff, come to some of our workshops. I'm a teacher to the core. I was teaching before I got into this stuff, and I'm teaching now. And we like the warm juju that it creates about here's what we're doing. Here's why it works. Here's how you can to use it. Go use it. Okay. So this right here, this 4-stepping process is the crown jewel. It's the centerpiece of the Enlifted the Enlifted method. So you converse from pattern to details down to a specific event, title it, have them write it out. That's a big fucking deal, because, and I will debate this till the end of days, even for a skilled therapist or coach, the difference between dialoguing about a story that is kept in a client's head versus one that is written down on paper, it's night and day. A story kept in our head, okay, is tough action, because where does it start? Where does it stop? Where's the one sentence that's holding it all together? Most of the time it's a flash of the worst part, stress response, ouch, don't like that. And then the coach tries to help them change their belief system about it, while the core emotional nuclear reactor of the thing is just firmly in place. Once a story is externalized, now it's finite. When it's inside, it's seemingly infinite. Now, when it's out, it's finite. It's got a beginning word and it's got an end word, and we're both staring at the same configuration of words. Okay, now there's no conjecture. Step 2, read it. Step 1, title a specific memory, write it out conversationally with punctuation, full sentences, check. Step 2, read it out loud. And be prepared, folks. I'm going to tell you why in a second. Step 3, read the exact same story at 70% of your normal rate of speech, your client's normal rate of speech. Why? Because when someone slows down their rate of speech, the breathing, the breath begins to descend. As the breath descends, very frequently the feels come up. You want that, because once the feels are up and out, then the whole thing becomes a whole lot more malleable. So breath trapped in the chest, that picture is in your face. You're in the picture. It's still personal. Okay, so you have your client tell it again, and they're basically just going to relive it. The mechanics of storytelling. As the breath descends, the picture moves away, and your client is going to change their own mind on their own. And any half smart woman will know, you get a man to think it was their idea, and it's on. So it's the difference between I highly recommend being a great questions coach than an all the right answers coach. I did all the right answers. It's exhausting. And it's also, it sets a weird dynamic, because I have to now be smarter about everything than my clients, and I need them to agree with everything. It creates it's just off balance. Great questions though. So answers push. Everybody write that down. Answers push, questions pull. And you want to pull this stories and beliefs and feelings up out of them, and they're gonna barf when on their own, in their own way. What do I mean by that? We'll get to step 4 here in a second. At some point in time, they're going to have an emotional crescendo to it, and you never know when it's going to happen. I've seen people have their emotional climax, sounds weird, whatever, at the thought of writing the story. I've seen people have their emotional crescendo writing the story. I've seen people have their emotional crescendo saying the story out loud for the first time, step 2. I've seen people be completely cool writing it and saying it, but when they slow it down, though, breath hits that feel, the feel happens, and wah. And then there's step 4, which is where at each period, this is the easiest way for me to describe it, and this is the foundations of it. There's a little bit of extra to it, and we're going to stay out of it to make this simple and practical. At each punctuation, at each period, you stop, you have your client stop and do what? And what that's going to do, it's going to loosen the whole thing up. The picture will move farther away. It'll go from personal to impersonal, subjective to objective, and they will redefine, because it's not the story that gets us, folks. It's the meaning that we assign to the story that gets us. Also known as belief systems, which is a clunky ass word for opinions. You know, people talk about belief systems. We're giving it too much credit. It's an opinion. All right. And I'm not good enough is not, you're not going to find that shit on the periodic table of elements. It's opinion. And it's, some people believe that so strongly that they stick Colt 45 in their mouth and pull the trigger. All right, let's get real serious about this. Okay, because words are powerful. Stories are very powerful. In my opinion, they're the most powerful influence in your life. You know, they're way consistent. I mean, it's the first thing that you recognize when you wake up in the morning. It's not like you get up out of bed and take a piss and go hit the coffee machine and then you start thinking. Before your eyes are open, you hear the words in your head. It's the last thing you recognize before you go to sleep. I mean, it's relentless. It's not consistent. It's relentless. So that 4th step, step 1, title it, write it out conversationally. Step 2, say it out loud. Step 3, say it at 75% speed. Step 4, say it slow and breathe at each period. Here's what step 4 will look like. Okay, so back to the kitchen. 2 paragraphs, 4 sentences each. My parents took my sister and I, sat us down in the kitchen. My mother was crying. My father was stoic as usual. My father said that your mother and I are getting a divorce. We've decided this is the best thing for the family. You all are going to stay here with her, and I'm getting an apartment on the other side of town. My little sister crawled under the table and burst into tears. And I kept thinking to myself, this is somehow my fault, and if I was a better son, they'd stay together. When I mean airing out stories, I mean it. And the first things first, get the story written down, folks. Okay, like I said, I mean, I've real, like torture, take out the war crimes, more rapes than I can count. Stop counting molestations years ago. Divorces, abuses, bullying, fights, horrendous dog attacks, stabbings, like failed businesses, opportunity of a lifetime on stage and they fucking choke, like stuff that just externalize it. They haven't written it down. I promise. Promise. And that's the first step to helping them move past it and stay past it. At some point in time, like I said, they're going to have an emotional reaction. You don't know when it's coming, which is another reason to keep your breath low and slow. And those questions, you know, you could be talking about, you know, a pattern in someone's adult life. You know, I just don't trust men. I just don't trust men. And you have them tell you more about that. You know, and maybe that emotion, those fears and emotions are fueling a negative eating pattern. So you start with the negative eating pattern and you get some examples of it. And then, you know, they have this feeling in their chest and in their stomach, and it's just this unease. And you're like, what does that have to do with, what does that remind you of? And they're like, I just, you know, well, that reminds me of, I was raped in college. Boom. Now you're in the deep end. The heat just got turned up on in the kitchen real fast. And what are you going to do? Well, you've got to make decisions now. Good. Great. Guess what? That's what coaching is. You're making decisions. It's a creative act. And you're going to be a lot better when you're breathing well. I know I just covered a lot of turf and put a lot of things on the table. Captain Morgan, work your magic, point me in a direction or ask a question. Yes.
Yeah, I think we'll start to wrap it up there, just for the sake of time, but definitely need a part 2 at some point, because we just scratched the surface and all of this stuff. So to wrap it up, I want to give a quote that I got from the Enlifted athlete course. We are constantly living in a subjective perception. You want to explain what that means a little bit?
Our language puts us in a story. We're built for it. It's neither good nor bad. You're going to tell you, if everything's working half decent, especially if you survive the holidays, you're going to tell yourself a story to yourself about yourself. Okay. And to the untrained storyteller, you're the storyteller, you're the presenter and the audience. And then from time to time, we bring other people into our story. Okay. When we use a lot of conflict language, we create very subjective stories. Okay. Or painful, subjective stories. What you want to learn to do is to use your language to make yourself an active participant in your story. Okay. Most people's language tricks them into being innocent bystanders. Okay. They're spectators, just watching life go by, watching people do things to them, watching the same negative patterns roll on, soft talking themselves into not doing anything, not taking any risk. No, folks, go fucking bet on yourself. Okay. Because nobody else is. And guess what? Other people actually will once you do. Once you know this, you're doing real well. Once you start betting on yourself, other people catch on. They're like, I want some of that, and I trust that person. Yeah, they're fine. They're human. They make mistakes, get things right sometimes, and they're in the arena.
Boom.
They're in the arena. One of my favorite quotes, I'd rather get trampled in the arena than be a spectator in the stands. And 2010, I'm living in a van in the winter, which is our summer in Australia, which is really weird. It's July and cold as shit. And I'm taking a training, and this guy stops the whole thing. And this was very not on brand for the coaching thing. And he goes, y'all are all acting like you're not going to die. Because y'all are acting like you're not going to fucking die. He's like, you're going to die. Your ass is grass. You're not getting out of here alive. And this is not the trial run. And you could hear a pin drop. And I'm still talking about that. So make just a few adjustments with your language, internal dialogue, external dialogue. unlock your breath a little bit, and start taking some risks, some good risks. Hang out with people that make you feel good. Okay. Get yourself out of gossip. Get
Hold
yourself
on,
out of
hold on,
gossip.
hold on. You said, so I want to break this down a little bit. You said hang out with people who make you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So this could go the same way. Like somebody else, you're letting somebody else stress you out if you're relying on other people to make you feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Fine. Yes, I take ultimate responsibility of my emotional status. And if I go hang out with crystal meth addicts on Skid Row for 3 years, 10 hours a day, I could be fucking Joe Rogan mindset, bulletproof mind, and I'm going to come out on the negative.
Makes it a whole lot easier when you have a
Yeah,
solid tribe.
for sure. And it's just more fun that way. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go with a crew. That's an Indian, American Indian saying. So yes,
Boom.
work on yourself and hang out with other people that are working on yourself and watch what happens. You'll get into these positive feedback loops.
Same thing with social media. It's not inherently a negative thing. Depends on who you follow and your beliefs on what you're seeing. If you're into that comparison and he did this, whatever. We can talk about that in our next podcast. Mark, if you had to leave the listeners with one thing, and then we'll get in, you can tell them where they can find more about Procabulary and everything you're doing with Enlifted as well. If you had to leave people with one actionable thing that we talked about to implement today, what would that one thing be?
Slow down your rate of speech next time that you're conversing with any of your family members. Because you're going to breathe better and you're going to have a better conversation with them. Even if things are already great. Slow down your rate of speech, have one slower conversation, and watch what happens. Take out family members and put in a date. I would imagine you got a lot of gentlemen following you. You all want to have a shitty date, fellas. Go on a date and hold your breath.
Be nervous.
Okay? Be nervous, be tense, be tight, and watch what happens. Watch a movie with your girl and hold your breath on the couch. Watch what happens. Watch some Netflix and actually really chill and breathe well. And yeah, watch what happens there. Get your breath, work on your breathing. Okay. The language, there's some complexities to it. Yeah, fine, whatever. Work on your breath. Gun to head, dude. It's about the breath. It's about unlocking the breath of humanity, individuals.
Love it.
If y'all are parents, breathe well around your kids. We inherit our parents' breathing patterns. That's a whole lot of stuff to that.
Lead by example.
Lead by example.
Yep. All right. Tell us where we can find more about everything that you've got going on.
The certifications, they're platinum level coaching certifications. Go to enlifted.me. And if you want to learn more about words and have some good laughs and watch me getting the occasional punch up with people online, go to Mark England 2057. It's my IG account.
Mm-hmm. So is enlifted.me, is that what I took? I did the way of the Enlifted athlete, correct?
Correct.
So that's something a little bit different.
You took both of our online courses. We're going to be discontinuing those in 2022 and creating a third and exclusive and final online training program, Enlifted Essentials. Thank you, because that will reside in the app. Okay, we got an app. It just came out. We've had a crack team working on it for 2 years. Go to the App Store, Enlifted app. It's free and fun.
What's up with this third course? Because that sounds interesting. If you're discontinuing Procabulary,
We're retiring procabulary, correct? Because, well, procabulary, there's 5 syllables. It's hard to say. 15% of the time, people say procabulary. Uh, and Enlifted is just, there's something cooler about the brand.
Mm-hmm.
We made procabulary for the fitness industry. And then when we went on Barbell Shrugged in 2017, yeah. And we got introduced to the fitness industry through the best podcast in the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to make a specific course for the fitness industry, and then that spawned the certs. And now we went like that. If y'all, yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
Enlifted Essentials will be the standalone definitive online course about how to transform your words and stories and identities.
Gotcha. Cool. Looking forward to that. All right, Mark, thank you for joining me on today's chat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope the listeners take action and they implement at least that final thing that you mentioned, the slowing down of the breath work or the words when speaking. Profound impact. All right, Mark, thanks again.